Stanford. You were talking about how the U.S., while you don't agree with the U.S., is actively getting involved with that communications between Taiwan and China. You said that the U.S. should strive to create an environment where the conversation can take place. What tools do you think are available for the U.S. to make this environment take shape? And do you suggest one tool over another? Is it purely perhaps economic? I'm assuming it's not military, but I don't know. What do you think is the way that the U.S. can create that environment for communications?
I would rephrase what I intended to say anyway, a little bit from that. I was at a session the other day at the Brookings Institution, and a very well-known American scholar on China said, well, the American policy is to seek peaceful resolution of cross-strait relations. And how are we going to do that? That's not U.S. policy. U.S. policy is to seek peaceful resolution of issues between the two sides, not to seek the resolution per se. Obviously, if it were to be able to work out to everybody's satisfaction, terrific. But that's not a goal that we have set for ourselves. That is a goal which the people on both sides, as I say, need to wrestle with. Our concern, in my view, is to ensure that a counter environment doesn't exist, one in which coercion can flourish, one in which, whether it's direct military, which maybe over 10 years this is going to be a problem, but it isn't today, in my view. But certainly the use of military force and economic force to try to coerce is used. I think we need to try to help in that respect. Economic tools, social tools. I never can remember the acronym for this initiative we have going on with Taiwan to train people from around the region, global initiative of some sort or other. Which I think is very good. By not remembering the name does not mean I disrespect it. I do respect it. But there are things we can do to bolster Taiwan's role as a player, a positive, constructive player in the region. We've tried in the areas where the PRC has cut them off to be as helpful as we can. But there's only so much you can do. When people say, and this includes Taipei saying, we want you to do more to help us become an observer again at the WHA, that's terrific, but we can't do that. I mean, we can help, but that we can do, but we can't make it happen. So I think we need to try to find other things. Let's do that. Let's argue for it. Let's put all the cards on the table that we can to make it a persuasive case. And that goes for the creating a stable, peaceful environment. But the U.S., I have to say, the U.S. continues to call for both sides to contribute patience, creativity, and flexibility to finding a way forward. We don't tell them what that means. But it isn't, I've had some of my friends in Taiwan push back at me and say, well, but we say that Tsai Ing-wen's been very non-provocative and more constructive, and if you look, you could see the winks at whom we think responsible for not taking creative and flexible steps. All that's true, but we're not getting beyond the stalemate at this point. So again, I don't think the U.S. should be telling Taipei what to do. I cannot conceive of the United States going to the leaders in Taiwan and saying you should accept the 1992 consensus. But this is not a one-person game. And I have to say that I think what President Tsai said a few days ago, if Beijing could think more constructively about it, actually does constitute an effort to try to get back to what might be a more creative way of approaching this issue, which is not to try to resolve a stalemate, but to find your way outside of that stalemate to reach goals that are mutually acceptable. I can't be more specific than that.
we're coming to the end of our time, Alan. I wonder if I could ask you a very specific question. It's a difficult question, but in years past, we've been gathered around tables where we're debating Taiwan arms sales. And Larry had correctly noted that the power balance has just changed dramatically over the last several decades. The last time that the United States debated arms sales that might have a real military difference in the cross-strait balance was the F-16s in 1992. Those days are long past. Unless the United States wants to engage in selling F-35s or nuclear attack submarines, the balance is what it is now. So how should the United States now, Ellen, look at arms sales? How should Taiwan look at arms sales? Because the era in which we really debate, let's think hard about that particular kind of capability. That could really make a difference. Those days are past now, and it remains a irritant. I've been surprised, though, over the last under Xi Jinping, arms sales have proceeded, and he hasn't drawn a red line anywhere. But as we look at the going forward now, how should the U.S. consider arms sales? Because they're not going to matter in the military balance.
Yeah, I guess I would ask you just to pull back that tenth of a step on they won't matter. They have some impact, and I think the PLA does worry to some extent.
I overstated. You're correct. Yeah.
But I think your fundamental point is right, and I think it's been right for quite a long time. The days, when the PRC used to say it would liberate Taiwan, it didn't have the capability to liberate Taiwan. Now, probably, if it could act fast enough and with enough fury, to coin a couple of phrases, it's possible that they could take whatever action they needed to take if they were willing to pay the price, which I don't think they are, to get it done in a military sense before the U.S. could show up for the rescue. If the president decided to do that, which is obviously a hugely consequential decision for any president to make. Arms sales, I think, are looked at in Taiwan. Well, let me start with the U.S. The U.S. looks at arms sales, as you certainly know very well, as a tool for enhancing deterrence and warfighting, if necessary, if deterrence fails for a period of time until the U.S. basically could show up if it decided to show up. Whether that would work, we have to hope that might well be the case. I think allowing just some unresponded to aggression doesn't mean we wouldn't do it, but it would certainly have huge consequences, not just for Taiwan, but for the U.S. interests throughout the region and throughout the world. So that's a very serious goal, I think. As you also know, U.S. defense officials have been quite outspoken in saying some of the choices made by Taiwan, even now, have not been the most productive in terms of what they could do to maximize the potential use of those sales for the purposes I just stated. And I've been impressed with how outspoken, in fact, they have been in talking about this, because this has been a subject for years. So from the U.S., I think that remains a critical point, although I also think that when you start to raise things like F-35s and nuclear attack submarines and so on and so forth, you get to issues which are much more strategic and political in nature, in the sense of the PRC perhaps becoming convinced, in fact, the U.S. does want to block unification. It's not neutral on whatever you guys work out. We have a view, and I think we need to take account of that. It's not an idealistic kind of approach we're taking here. From Taiwan's point of view, I remember back in the Chen Shui-bian era, when a National Security Council official said to me, we're really only buying these missiles, these anti-missile missiles, both to try to convince the people in Taiwan that we're doing something meaningful, even if it's not, and to please the United States. Right? That didn't strike me as an enormously constructive approach to looking at arms sales, and that contributes, I think, to some of these concerns about buying blitz instead of something that's more effective. This is not an issue, in my view, that is going to be that is the overall relationship that's going to be solved militarily. I don't think the PRC wants to, and I don't think, at least at this point, it feels it needs to. I don't think it's reached that kind of a decision. I think if it felt Taiwan was going to independence, that's a different matter altogether.